Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'll give it a couple of minutes before we launch into things. I believe we've got about 50 people registered for this session, which is fantastic. You're all very welcome, and I hope the weather isn't as ghastly where you are as it is in North Cardiff, where I am. It's particularly miserable. Hope to see the end of winter very soon. So today we're joined at CHC by the folks from Apello, Tim and Dave, talk us through what we need to be thinking about and what Apello can offer when we're transforming our housing for older people, thinking about digital innovation and technology. And we know that is a vast subject, and I look forward to unpicking and exploring it. And I'm sure you're all fully mindful of how timely and apt it is that we're discussing this, given the couple of years we've had, the advancements in technology recently, and of course the upcoming replacement to the ICF and the Transformation Fund in the form of the Regional Integration Fund and the Housing with Care Fund and all these different things. And as a reminder, we're running a session on that on the 2nd of March. So we can explore all the funding stuff another time, but this is a great piece of the puzzle to be exploring with all that in mind. Some big opportunities and lots to consider. So the session will be recorded, just to make you aware, and you'll see that you'll have a Q&A box and a chat box. We'll be having lots of time for questions towards the end of the session, so please put all your questions in the Q&A. And then if you have any general contributions or comments, or you need a hand with anything tech-wise, then Julia and I will be really, really happy to help. Just pop it in the chat box. So you've got a couple of options there to get in touch with us. Please do ask your questions as and when they occur to you. We'll get to them towards the end. We're looking forward to a really interesting conversation about what I know is a big topic, both in terms of breadth and significance right now. So I will pass over now, and I will be back for Q&A towards the end, but you know where we are in the meantime. Thanks, everyone.
Sarah, thank you very much for the introduction, and folks, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy days to listen to us. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about Apello and a little bit about why we think this is a topic we've got some really great insights to be able to share. And a lot of that stems from experience. So we are nearly 35, actually. We're over 30 years old, and our experience in that time has all been about delivering telecare services to housing providers and local authorities. And we are, these days, we're the largest telecare monitoring provider in the UK. We look after about 300,000 connections on behalf of about 450 housing providers and local authorities. That's probably about 250,000 end customers on behalf of those providers. And although that has given us a great deal of depth and experience of what housing and social care need to do to deliver great experience for end residents, it's been our more recent experience over the last 5 or 6 years in introducing and innovating digital technology, which is probably the most relevant to the conversation we're going to have today. We've made about 500 or so housing provider sites digital, and we'll explain what digital means as we go through this, because there's a breadth of what digital is and what digital isn't. But that's about 20,000 residents who've gone from traditional analog, what you might call warden call style emergency call systems, to more interactive, more life supporting, more positive, more engaging digital telecare that's helped improve their life. So we've gained from those circa 500, or well, it's over 500 now, sites that we've done on behalf of housing providers. We've learned an awful lot about how it can transform the living experience, and importantly, support the values that different housing providers and different local authorities have in terms of the ambitions for their customers. So let's move on to unpack that a little bit more and bring some of it to life. One of the things that we've learned from working with the number of housing providers that we've taken on the digital journey is that all of them appreciate their own set of priorities. They have their own charters, their own ambitions, they have their own corporate values, and what they've all found without exception is that the right blend of technology and empathetic, well-trained people at the right place and the right point in their organization is a very, very big step change in the residents' living experience. The amount of information, better insight, and better decision making, as well as more engaged, more connected residents, is an absolute win-win. So it doesn't matter what the priorities of your particular organization are, the digital transition is part of helping you get to that end point. Let me bring that to life a little bit more over the coming slides in terms of how we believe now is such an opportune time. And Sarah mentioned this in her introduction. The last couple of years have reinforced for anybody who was in any doubt that the ability to be able to have some insights into how people are, how their living patterns are, how their health is, how their well-being is, their mental health in particular, their level of loneliness or community spirit, being able to understand those things and help improve those things remotely, as well as when we have the opportunity to be in situ, is a really powerful lesson learned from COVID. And we know that it has driven an amount of rethinking from housing providers and local authorities about the way they deliver services. We know that the integrated care systems, the joining of social care and health services is another driver of change. There are a number of different tipping points, all of which point to now being the single best time in history for housing and local authorities to consider how they use technology to enhance their offering. So let's give some examples of why now is the right time. Firstly, as I'm sure you will all be aware, but just in case you aren't, over the course of the next few years, British Telecom and the other UK telcos will be switching off their analog telephony networks that the majority of telecare services currently run over. Wales is relatively well advanced in this, so there's a number of sites, a number of local exchanges where you can no longer buy traditional old analog services. And what we do know is that from schemes where analog services are in place, there is an increasing amount of first-time call failure because the analog signals are struggling to traverse these blend of modern digital networks and still sections of it being traditional analog technology. And I use the word technology quite lightly in that analog sense. So moving to a digital infrastructure not only gives a greater peace of mind about end-to-end first-time call certainty, it also dramatically speeds up that call journey. So typically, a customer and a resident raising an alarm in one of our Smart Living Solutions sites will take 3 to 4 seconds for their call to reach the monitoring centre. As you'll know from your own experience with traditional analog services, that can be anywhere between 20 and 90 seconds or longer. So that move to digital infrastructure is one of the reasons. The other reason why now is a great time for change and transition towards a better digital living experience is the changing expectations of residents and end customers. So we recently surveyed a selection of over 65s, and there was very, very strong agreement about the requirement for being able to communicate in more modern ways than just answering what might be a typical door entry call via a handset, or not having access to what we would, many of us, I'm sure all of us on this call, would consider an absolute staple of society now, would be internet, whether that's via Wi-Fi or a direct connection. But the days where it is considered that, and I'm putting inverted commas around this, the elderly can't cope with technology and don't know how to use it, or don't know how to work with it and won't benefit from it, those days are long since gone. That demographic is driving change themselves in terms of the way they're adopting to FaceTime, Skype, instant messaging, etc., with their friends and family, to which they are actively pursuing a journey where they expect to have connectivity in their apartments or in their homes to help them fulfill a more normal and engaged life, especially in times of isolation. The last thing, which I think is a compelling reason why now is the best time ever for change, is that if we've got the network being switched off and we've got end customers' perceptions strongly changing towards technology being a good and helpful thing to them, then the third strand to that is what do housing authorities and local authorities think about the benefits and opportunities presented by a greater use of technology. And this is some work which the Housing LIN, the Learning Independent Network, did in conjunction with us earlier on in the COVID scenario, so 21, and they researched about 123 organizations providing those types of social or housing services, and unanimously across all of them there was a strong feeling that the importance of technology and the ability for technology to help them to deliver services better was a key part of what they'd learned and what was influencing their strategy and their thinking going forward. So when we talk about technology, it's a very, very broad umbrella, and technology is never the answer. The answer is what the technology can help you deliver. And there are some really important principles that we think about when we consider how we're going to use technology to help our housing providers deliver better services to their end customers. The first is people-centric. It has to be based around the end user. So it has to be simple to use, it has to be easy to understand, and most importantly, the benefits of using it have to be sufficiently compelling to make it worthwhile. So many things fail because they're harder to use than the level of benefit they deliver. We've made all of our technology very, very familiar, comfortable, intuitive, and easy. And we've had tremendous feedback about how that has been a big part of why it's been embraced so widely. Now, within that, there are also some things which we consider to be really important. So we want our technology to work with other people's technology so that you don't create this island where you can only buy, and if anybody's an Apple user, they know this feeling intimately. You are hemmed in terms of the products that work really well with your particular choice of technology. Being able to get meaningful, insightful data out of it that helps you run your business better because you know what is happening where, and what priority it should be tackled with, is a really fundamental part of the outcomes we're looking for technology to deliver. So the second of the three themes that we think are really important in how we use technology is about proactivity. Being able to help housing providers have that more insightful knowledge of their customers, and therefore be on the front foot rather than waiting for activities to happen. And some of the obvious areas of this, which are commonplace, are understanding when batteries need replacing in devices connected to the emergency call system, or being able to understand who feels they need attention on a particular day versus others who feel very happy to be left alone because their lives are running smoothly and comfortably. And the last thing that's a principle for us is about operating anywhere. One of the things that you will have all experienced during COVID was that the ability to work on site and off site, and yet have still the same level of insight about what's occurring and what needs to occur, is one of the really important drivers of change and productivity. The first two are very much about the benefits which the end customer can receive and enjoy. That anywhere services is very much about the productivity and efficiency that housing providers can gain. If we talk about some of the big themes in terms of technology, there are some big headline buckets, I guess you'd call them, of development which are taking place, and you'll have all heard these terms. And what we spend a lot of time with our housing provider customers talking about is not what the big titles are, it's what are the outcomes? What do you use the technology for to deliver a better way of working, to deliver a better living experience? So it isn't about any one or two or three of these being the silver bullet that will transform your organization just on its own. Just having deep, rich data, or having a connected universe of sensors and monitors, that on its own doesn't provide the transformation for a housing provider. It's knitting those together into a cohesive design that delivers certain outcomes that is the biggest transformation. So we like to start a bit with this in mind rather than the previous slide. What are the things we're trying to help housing providers deliver? So cost coming down, effectiveness, efficiency coming up, well-being of residents and customers improving, faster response times. All of these are things which you would recognize as being ambitions that you and your organization have for the way you deliver services. Now, the technologies on the previous slide are how you can go about delivering some of these. So I'll just give a couple of examples. So I'll pick improved well-being, as that's something that every housing provider would have as an ambition. How do you improve well-being? You tackle some of the things that are a proven and known challenge to those living in retirement or older people's housing. Social isolation is one of the key drivers of loneliness and mental anxiety. So being able to use cloud technology, being able to use video-enabled devices, being able to use remote sensors which discreetly identify whether somebody's had company or not and how long since they last did. All of those things can subtly but helpfully give a resident a much better living experience. And you know, just to give some concrete evidence to this, we surveyed about 1,000 end residents who'd had our Smart Living Solutions video enabled emergency call system installed, and 80% plus felt safer with such a fast connection time. About 90% felt safer being able to see who they were letting in through the communal front door because it had video enabled front door technology. But one of the facts we loved the most was that 1 out of 2 people felt their well-being had improved because of the ability to remotely or on site speak to a resident in another apartment or the house manager, and to be able to do that from their apartment or even from the comfort of their own bed using our Mirror application. 1 out of 2 people feeling their well-being had improved as a result of Smart Living Solutions being installed is a really great testament, I think, to how the intelligent use of well-designed technology can deliver transformation. And just to paint a little picture of that, Smart Living Solutions, what I was referring to, is on the right-hand side, and other current typical digital devices are on the left. So these are all, in inverted commas, digital. And Dave, in a few moments, will start to paint the picture a little bit about what does digital really mean and what does it really not. The devices on the left don't fundamentally transform the living experience. They don't reduce the level of stigmatization. They don't give that ability to have a inclusive, engaging, confidence inspiring session remotely or in person with other residents around the apartment. Don't deliver that same non-stigmatizing and we treat you as a valued resident because we're investing. We're not just replacing what you've had already with something similarly beige or gray or plastic. We're giving you an improved living experience, and as a result of that, we've seen customer satisfaction hitting 80s, 90s, and right up to 100% in terms of the feeling that residents have had their lives improved as a result. The last thing I'll just mention, because I did touch on this right at the beginning, was that all of this has to be a benefit to safety as well as to well-being. And of course, the faster connection time is a really important part of that. But there are devices and systems which use wireless technology, and of course, wireless has a great part to play. But the reason the British standards are so specific about being hard powered and permanently mounted is to protect the residents from that scenario where they take a wireless device, they use it, and then they forget to replace it in its charging dock. They can't find it in the need of an emergency, or it isn't charged. So when you are considering about transformation, of course, the benefits of digital, flexible, and life improving are vital, but safety and compliance with British standards needs to go hand in hand. Those were my key messages, really. We've got a little bit more that we're going to share with you in terms of some specific details around the different products that are available. And Dave, my colleague, is going to lead us through that. I've noticed, I haven't had a chance to read them yet because I've been, as you've noticed, I've been speaking, but I've seen some questions coming in and some chat comments. So we'll digest those, and after Dave has run through his slides, we'll handle those at the end, if that's okay. But please, it's great to have your inputs as we go through, and do keep those questions, comments, observations coming. Dave, over to you.
Thanks, Tim.
Smart Tech is the leading range of digital hardwired and dispersed alarm technology enabled care innovations. From enhancing safety and well-being to to ensuring a safe digital connection in a communal setting or an individual home. Our Smart Tech range enables everyone to join the digital journey.
Well, thanks for that, Tim. That's a great introduction and a good 360 view of where technology and services can coexist together. My role today is to take you through a little bit more in detail around the smart tech products available from Apello and how in a digital world, these digital solutions fit in and enable us to get the best possible out of technology. So under the hardwired solutions that Apello offer, we've got Smart Living Solutions, which is our flagship model, Smart Connect, which is a recently launched, and also Smart Life, which is a digital dispersed alarm. And what we wanted to do is we produced a small table which shows some of the differences between different types of solutions working in a digital environment and what that might do from mitigating risks associated with analog working on a digital network, and also a comparison between what some of our solutions offer to the solutions that are out there currently. And what I'd like to start with is the speed. Tim mentioned the speed at which digital devices connect. So you look at Smart Connect, Smart Living Solution, it's probably 3 to 4 seconds. A hybrid solution, which is an analog system with a bolt-on digital converter, probably 20, 30 seconds. But the analog systems that Tim mentioned earlier, probably between 20 and 90 seconds, dependent on whether they get through first time. And that getting through the first time is a bit that's of paramount importance in this digital environment, because we know, and it's detailed within the industry, that analog systems working over a digital network do raise an increased opportunity for first time call failures. So thinking about the speed of connection, which is around safety, around making sure that the customers have the right connection speed, get the opportunity to tell what the problem is at the quickest and most possible convenient time they can. When we're doing that, we also have an opportunity to say, in this digital world of ours, do we ever get to a situation where we'll need more than one call going off site at the same time? Well, the answer in the digital world is yes, and it's easily coped with. In an analog world, we've never been able to have that. You've had call queuing, which means you'll get one call answered at the monitoring center, and the next 2, 3, 4 calls end up queuing behind it. And until that call is dealt with, the second or third or fourth call don't get answered. Now, on a hybrid solution, we understand from manufacturers that you can have a maximum of 2 calls. But what's important to know is those 2 calls are on different telephony lines or broadband connection. So you need 2 telephone lines in effect to have 2 simultaneous calls. With Smart Connect, we can have up to 4 simultaneous calls off-site at the same time. And with Smart Living Solutions, it's limited only by the number of speech modules that are on site. So the number of devices that we've got in resident properties is a limiting factor. And the reason we can manage multiple calls off-site is because we use voice over IP across an open internet connection. But that comes with its own difficulties also. And those difficulties around protecting the voice and the data of the individuals who are using our systems. Now, in some areas, typically the analog using a digital converter, they use VPN connectivity to protect the system information and the voice when doing that call. TLS is the standard encryption. It's TLS 1.2 that we use, which is transport layer security, similar to what banks use for internet banking. And that gives us full end-to-end encryption and protection of the data and the voice going offsite. Coming down, we think about what different applications, and Tim has mentioned the use and the different aspects of what digital technology can introduce in the future, and the interoperability of third-party devices and the integration of that we'll talk about on the next slide. So what do Apello do? Apello have introduced what they call the Apello Cloud, which helps us to manage our smart tech portfolio. So it's a suite of connected cloud services, all of which use end-to-end digital, using voice over IP TLS encryption, as I mentioned, but they also use the open protocols of the European and the UK standards, which all manufacturers have committed via the TSA to embed into their solutions going forward. Some are a little bit more forward than others, and Tim mentioned about the fact that we've probably answered more digital calls at Apello than the rest of the industry put together. And that's only because we've been doing digital for 5 years and we've got over 20,000 connections out there. And every time a call's raised on that, it's a digital call. So what we've done within the Smart Tech portfolio is we've tested people like Legrand. We've tested it obviously into kind of our own Apello system, but also into Innovation Umo. So we've tested to some of the major suppliers of monitoring solutions, and there's obviously one missing from there, but I'm sure during this next 12 months, they'll try and make a situation occur where they will be in a position to offer a digital solution. And the cloud services interact with all of the elements within the suite. So I'll start with what is, I think, the absolute center of the cloud services that Apello offer, which is the single best record. The single best record allows our customers to access information about their clients and customers from anywhere. And that information is pulled from the services like Apello HQ, which is a management software for calls on site from Smart Connect and Smart Limit Solution. We also pull call information from CareNet, which means in SBR, we can see all the calls off-site and on-site associated with a single resident record. Now, the Apello Nexus helps us manage multiple sites. So for instance, Housing 21 might use Nexus to manage all their HQ sites. We talked about Digital Bridge. I put on the comparator slide, there was a mention of it there. And the Digital Bridge is there to try and mitigate the risks of first-time failure calls from analog equipment over the digital infrastructure. And the final element, the final jigsaw piece, is Apello IO. And IO stands for input output, and it's our opportunity to integrate and analyze third-party technologies within the cloud service. So we can take information from areas like Fitbit, Wazan, Canary Care, and push that into SBR. So within SBR, we're not only looking at the calls history associated with the calls, emergency calls, social calls, we're also looking at information around the number of steps potential, how they've gone with their blood pressure or pulse oximetry, or in effect, how their movement's been around the rooms that they've got in their property. And that links us into why, when we look at SLS, that system has been designed to transform supported housing and enhance the services associated for users within that environment. And Tim made a great statement about the well-being when he said about 1 in 2 people felt they felt better as a result of using SLS. So Tim's mentioned it's been deployed in over 500 schemes, and it was designed specifically to use a digital infrastructure using digital technologies. So SLS is an open protocol. It uses the industry standard Now IP, and that allows customers to choose. And when I say choose, it means you can choose which monitoring solution you use for your systems. You're not tied to Apello, although obviously we'd like you to use CareNet. I'd be silly not to say that, but you're not tied to Apello. This is about open protocol and open industry. And the whole point of digital is to transform the way we deliver services. And we've seen it by people using technology that we never thought people would use. Tim mentioned about the over 65s no longer being the group where they can't use technology. They do use it if they find that it's useful and easy to use. And looking at the SLS system, to make a video call on site, you hit the contact button and then you select the resident you call, and they have the choice to answer in either voice only or video. Now, because it's a 7-inch Android tablet or 10-inch, depending on the options that you go for, you've got that opportunity to connect and integrate other applications with the services that you offer. And that allows you to expand in the future what you do. And the last bit I wanted to leave on, sorry, Ian, the last bit I wanted to leave on is, in November last year, we attended the Senior Housing's Awards dinner, and Apello was seen as the best use of technology in senior housing as winners of the category. And that's a fantastic accolade to the systems that we operate. Thank you. So here's just a simple snapshot of Smart Living Solutions. I won't touch on all of it, but I'll touch on just a couple. And obviously, when you look at the presentation afterwards, you can spend whatever time you want identifying and having a good look at the areas that you find of interest. But I think the pendant is one that's quite useful. How many times do people have to do the test of pendant once a month? Well, with our system, the pendant auto tests itself every day, reporting on the battery condition. Every day, Apello HQ is updated with that information. You don't need to test anymore. The video communication, resident to resident, and the video door entry all help people feel safer and more connected and less socially isolated. The opportunity to have a Wi-Fi and a Bluetooth option, most customers take them up at the very start. And we've all seen the situation in the monitoring centre where the resident can't hear the voices coming out of the unit because they're in the bedroom and the unit's in the hall or in the lounge. And a simple Bluetooth speaker from PC World or any other outlets and others are available, a Bluetooth speaker with microphone can transform that and ensure that if the person's in bed, a £30 speaker and microphone gives them access to voice and communication to the monitoring centre. And the last bit I'll leave you with is, because it is an Android device, we've already started to integrate with IoT devices. In fact, on some of our demo suites, when the units go into power save mode, it actually brings up a digital clock to help people suffering from dementia that basically says it's morning or it's afternoon and what time it is, just to try and help people. And it's simple things like that that will help transform the opportunities for the future. So now I'd like to talk to you about Smart Connect. And Smart Connect was designed because we realized with Smart Living Solutions, you've got to completely replace the wiring from the traditional infrastructure to a structured computer cable infrastructure. But in some buildings, that's not possible. It's physically not possible. So we wanted to ensure we still delivered a safe connection for a digital technology enabled care solution. And Smart Connect is the answer. So Smart Connect was developed purely to be a digital system deployed on existing wiring. So let's just make a comparison now between that and a hybrid solution. Hybrid solution is analog with a digital converter for the protocol, which doesn't speed up the connection time that much. Having a digital solution designed to work on traditional analog wiring is unique within the industry, and no one else can boast of that service or that solution. As it's part of the Smart Tech range, it gets all the same opportunities for Apello HQ, how we do the back office information, how we take the calls offsite using Now IP protocol. And it helps us get that opportunity to still continue along the digital transformation journey, but more as a starting point than an end point. The Smart Connect ensures it's a safe connection and it's got all the benefits of digital telecare. It's also designed that it will work on Cat5 infrastructure or Cat6 if that cable is available. But we expect it predominantly to be deployed on traditional wiring, but it's not held to that. And as I mentioned, it's compatible with all the UK and the European standards for protocols. So along with some of the snapshot of the features and benefits, we can see it's got an IMOK. The pendant's exactly the same way it does the auto testing. The big one is using the existing infrastructure, the existing wiring, to ensure we've got a true, fully digital solution. It works with the TLS encryption, as I mentioned, and the opportunity to have simultaneous calls. a maximum of 4. And obviously we can do broadcast communications across all the modules at the same time. So now I'd like to talk about Smart Life. And it's quite a bold statement to say it's a groundbreaking interoperability for a digital era of technology-enabled care. But it is. Now, I joined Apello about 18 months ago, and we were still at the latter stages of designing of Smart Life. And one of the areas that customers had spoke to me about before I joined Apello was about the interoperability that's never been available in the tech industry. Everybody's always kept their own little protocols to themselves, or their own little radio infrastructures to themselves. And at Apello, we decided to try and turn that on its head. So what we wanted to do is design a product, a digital dispersed alarm, which would be interoperable to other smart tech devices, so other peripheral devices from other manufacturers. And that provides housing care providers the reassurance of compatibility, but it also means it's going to work in a digital telecoms network, and you don't have to replace the existing telecare solution that you may have invested in. Now, I had a call earlier on today, and that customer had got 4,000 analog dispersed alarms, but 12,000 peripherals. If they choose to deploy our Smart Life unit, they will not have to change any of those peripherals. And the peripherals is a much greater investment than what the base unit, the digital telecare unit, is in itself. So it does really give you the opportunity to have a much greater choice, and it enables you to personalize the services because you can use the peripheral from a manufacturer without changing the unit to that manufacturer's unit. And that is unique within the industry. It's future-proof, it's got digital connectivity, it connects to the Ethernet, and I've got a slide which gives me a summary of that now. So when we talk about unprecedented digital connectivity, it uses both fixed line, mobile network, it's now IP, it's also SCAPE, it works on 4G, it works on LTE, and LTE might be a term that you're not familiar with. All that means is long-term evolution of the 4G network. So it's just a mobile connection, and it also works over GSM. It will work using the old BS8521 analog protocol to an ARC that hasn't got digital enabled connectivity. And as I said, it's interoperable with Apello, Tunstall and Care from the get-go. And as you know, you probably hopefully will know that Care are probably the largest independent supplier of telecare equipment. We've got Bluetooth compatibility, so we can use low energy Bluetooth speakers or low energy Bluetooth hearing aids to connect to the unit, uses the encryption, and we've got a cloud function in the DMP which allows us to control, program, change, upgrade software at any time, so that you've got a system that is truly able to change with the changing needs of the customers. I think that's my last slide in.
So at this stage, we were due to be joined by, as you can see on the screen, some representatives from Cardiff Council, one of the residents as well, to talk through their experience of having smart living solutions deployed and how it was adapted to, adopted and helped out on the site. Unfortunately, they have had trouble with the security settings of their laptop and phone with Zoom. So I stress nothing to do whatsoever with our connectivity or our solutions. This was just from laptops and phones. They couldn't get onto Zoom because of the site's broadband security settings. So apologies for that, but we are going to arrange for a separate interview with them to be videoed and circulated to this audience. Sarah, I've seen a number of questions come through. I don't know whether you want to play host on that or whether we should plow through them ourselves.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, thank you for all that. And yeah, real shame that Sue and Victor couldn't join us at this point in time, but I'm sure we'll get their thoughts and their story out to the audience and as soon as we can. I'm very happy to field the questions. But first, just to mention that there's a poll that we're going to pop in the chat. So if everyone can just have a quick look at that when that gets popped in now, that'd be fantastic. And we have had a few, that should pop up for you now. And I will go through the questions. Thank you for putting all your questions in the Q&A in the chat. So the first one I saw come up is from Hayley. And I know that dementia was mentioned in regards to the sort of the morning, afternoon sort of reminders, but Hayley's question was, how will this technology support people with dementia or mild cognitive impairment more generally, I'm guessing?
Yeah, absolutely. So really great question. And we've done quite a lot of work across all ends of that spectrum. So we have some, they were in a slightly ruggedized setting, but in a learning difficulties setting, as well as through to acquired brain injury and into more milder versions of cognitive challenge. Dementia is the obvious one. Smart Living Solutions has been used in a number of those different scenarios. And at a very basic level, remember, this is just an emergency call system in the same way that they potentially already have one, where it's much richer and able to do more valuable things for those people with cognitive impairments is by reminders, is through auto prompts, is through messaging, and the ability to actively contact that person at certain times, and not in a challenging or frightening way, but to be able to talk them through their patterns of daily life. So it is designed thoughtfully, and the user interfaces are customizable for various housing providers. So and within your housing provider set, as well as it being designed for your general residents, there is also the opportunity to make a very simplified version, which we have done for some housing providers, for specifically for certain cohorts. So hopefully that's a bit of an overarching answer. Happy to provide more detail offline.
Thanks, Tim. That's great. Hopefully that's answered your question, Hayley. One from Louise. Could you confirm why Wi-Fi doesn't fit with the British standards? I haven't seen that detailed.
Okay, so the British standards for emergency call systems specify it must be permanently powered and permanently mounted, and they specify the signaling protocols that must be used. And Wi-Fi, but just by the nature of not being permanently connected, doesn't sit within those British standards. So it's not currently signed off as a compliant way of handling a telecare emergency call under the British standards.
Okay, thank you. One from Shane. Does the Smart Living Solution system work as a dispersed option or only via fixed scheme ends installation?
Yes, it's only fixed for the reasons I just described. So we have there is an optional app called the Mirror app, which means that on a resident's tablet or device, they can mirror the functionality of the room units. So if you're, for example, in bed or on your sofa, you could see the video door entry and allow someone access. So that functionality to use it remotely, but because of the piece I mentioned about the British standards requirement, the room unit itself is permanently powered and permanently attached to the wall. Smart Life, which was the last device that Dave talked through, is our dispersed alarm offering. Again, hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Tim. Another one from Shane was, will all manufacturers' peripherals work with the Apello monitoring systems? Forgive me, I know you talked a bit about peripherals earlier.
Yes, so there's a number of different nuances to that. So the overarching answer is, with the monitoring centre, any peripheral that's signalling any British standard will come in, and there are no, and Dave, you may correct me on this, but there are no peripherals currently sold by any of the manufacturers that aren't compliant with an appropriate British standard. If they are a dedicated telecare, smoke detector, fall detector, etc. Dave, is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, Tim. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those are able to signal into our monitoring centre. In terms of interoperability with peripherals, Smart Life, which is our dispersed alarm, is compatible so far with Tunstall and with Care. So and we are looking at other manufacturers as well. But the vast majority of peripherals out there are from one of those two manufacturers.
Super, thank you both. Thanks, Shane, for your questions. And one from Rebecca: what is the environmental impact of this system in comparison to other systems?
Yeah, really, that's a really, really good question, actually. And there is a study being done by the University of Sussex on exactly that point. And they've actively approached us because they believe digital telecare has an ability to reduce carbon emissions overall, because there is a couple of things, but the obvious one is a reduced need for physical visits, either from a maintenance engineer, because we can do a lot of the rebooting and reprogramming remotely, as well as from on-site staff being able to more remotely access and chat to talk through the needs and wants of residents. So yeah, our initial impressions from the work that's been done so far is that this is a positive contributor to a lower overall carbon footprint. We'll send details of the research project. It's a 3-year study, I think, and it's about a year in, but we'll send details of that out as a follow-up.
That'd be great, thank you. I know there's some work going on through the National Commissioning Board here in Wales about the decarbonisation of social care. So that's of interest to us in THC and many of our members too. So that'd be fantastic. Great, thank you for your question, Rebecca. We've got another few questions, which is great. Please do keep popping them in the Q&A, everyone.
Absolutely.
It's fantastic. So next question is, how have your customers benefited during COVID from these systems?
Oh, there's a number of different ways, but I'll just summarize a couple of them. Firstly, it's been about that ability to be able to contact residents without having to be on site. So a large number of our housing providers, as you will have experienced yourself, took staff off site during the periods where shielding was required. And to be able to still engage with residents, they used the video capability of Smart Living Solutions to interact with those who they knew in particular were suffering from anxiety or social exclusion or even just mild loneliness. So that's one way. Another way was residents being able to improve their own sense of community. So one of the features of Smart Living Solutions is apartment to apartment video calling. Now, in a communal retirement setting, it would be easy to imagine that everybody's got access to everybody all the time. But of course, a number of people have mobility challenges, and during shielding, even if you didn't have mobility challenges, there were restrictions about meetings. So we had a great story about one site, one scheme, where they played video bingo and used the Smart Living Solutions as the mechanism for engaging, because, as you know, you'll experience this within your own customer base. Currently, the distribution and the adoption of smart technology is 25 to 40% or so at best, in terms of those who've got access to a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop to be able to actually get online, and that's been a real boon. So at a headline level, it's been benefits of productivity and improvement for the housing providers and greater levels of social connection for the residents. Those have been the two main takeaways.
Thank you. Last 5 minutes, I'll try and get through the last few questions and get to everyone's. Are all your products connected to the cloud?
In some way or another, yes.
Fab, thank you very much. What's been the adoption
Securely, and the important thing to add to that, because Dave did touch on this, securely connected to the cloud.
Right, perfect, thanks. What's been the adoption of and feedback on video?
Really strong on the whole, and this comes back to the point about being able to make it usable. And if you think back to the example Dave gave, you don't have to be a technology wizard to be able to press 2 tiles on a device to be able to connect to apartment 16. If one resident wants to have a chat with her neighbor or his neighbor, then all they need to do is press a couple of tiles. Now, definitely, we don't see universal usage of this. It's circa 10% or so of residents adopt full use of video, but there's high use from house managers to residents. And that has been a great way of improving the level of connection and responsiveness, especially during times where housing providers are trying to reduce the number of sites that are looked after by a single housing officer or housing manager.
I think it's also worth mentioning, Tim, if I may, about where the Mirror app fits in for the scheme manager. Because if the Mirror app for the scheme manager is used, then they can do video calling to anybody on the scheme from wherever they are in the world without necessarily being on site. And that makes a great enhancement and the customer experience as well. It's remarkable how well that's been received.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Good input.
Thank you both. How do your customers benefit from the data side of things?
So some really simple examples of this are just around productivity and being able to see the I'm okay, being able to see low battery alerts, being able to see who's in, who's out, who's up, who's still in bed. All of those, there are options around all of those. None of them are an intrusive thing. They're in agreement with the residents. And I'm okay, for example, being on the dashboard for the housing manager to be able to determine who they go visit, who they don't visit, and being able to see that whether they're on site or off site is a really significant productivity improvement, as well as a customer experience benefit, because you actually know what your customers need and how to deliver it.
Super. And last one, and this person apologizes if they missed something, but they just wanted to double check. Do all the makes of pendants and full pendants work with Apello, or are there some makes of pendants that don't?
With our monitoring center, all makes of pendants work. With some of our products, it depends on which manufacturer they are from, but the majority will work with Smart Life, which is our dispersed alarm. Again, if there's specific examples, please just ping them across to Dave and I, and we'll happily answer with those specific case study in mind.
I think one thing to add on to that, if I may, Tim, is around the Smart Life receiver is both a one-way and a two-way radio receiver. So irrespective of whether it's a one-way transmission or a two-way transmission, which is where digital's taking us, the receiver we use already has that capability built into it. It's just a matter of modeling the radio protocol from the new manufacturer into that radio receiver.
Good point.
Wonderful, thank you both. And we are absolutely on time, which means that we've made the most of all of our time together, and I've kept the questions on track. So that's a win for everyone. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Dave. And thank you for everyone's questions. Really appreciate it. And had a couple of people who had to to slip off to other meetings just a second ago, saying it was extremely informative webinar. So I hope that's the case for everyone. I hope it's been valuable. Thank you for giving us your time on a miserable Tuesday time. Hope you have something cozy and warming for your lunch. And the slides and recording will be circulated. Tim and Dave mentioned they're open to any questions, any clarifications. Please do get in touch with them, and hopefully we'll be able to circulate the case study details from Cardiff Council, as well as the report that Tim mentioned and research. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Tim, Dave, and
thank you, great
behind the scenes.
Thank you a lot for your time, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I echo that. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Okay. Take care, everyone, and speak to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.